Moms of Reddit, what is a wild secret of your past that your kids rather not know about? My mom told my siblings and me on Easter when I was 14 that she used to be a child prostitute for the accuser. She told us because her sister was going to tell us because she felt like my mom had stolen her daughter and was using it as a bargaining chip. My cousin came to live with us across the country because her mom was in jail for drug abuse. My mom told me once, while she was tipsy, that my dad was actually her high school teacher and they began a SL relationship when she was his student at the age of 16. She said they would often have sex with her in school uniform. They managed to keep everything under wraps for years. And they got married when she graduated from college and gave birth to me a few years later. Not sure how wild this is, but right before I was born, like 2 or 3 days beforehand, my dad's older cousin had a daughter born severely unhealthy. She wasn't stillborn but she wasn't going to make it past a few days. So anyway, after I was born, my dad's aunt came into the delivery room and said to my mom, "You young, you'll have plenty of time to have another child but my daughter can't. Let me buy this baby off of you." I only found out about this when I was 15 because my sister told me. Apparently my parents never planned on telling me this. Edit. Growing up, my mother was a titan. She graduated top of her class in her farm and chaired several major drug regulation boards. She was always very serious about school and we were told that B's were absolutely unacceptable because she was a straight A student all through college. We took that to heart up until I was cleaning out the attic a few years ago when I discovered some old grade reports from college. Guess who got a C in sociology and another one in linear algebra? Tough take, mom. Tough take. I'm the dad in this situation. But my wife used to be severely addicted to opiates, which I helped get her out of by moving the family to a new town and letting her spend 2 weeks in bed dealing with withdrawals while I handled every other aspect of the house, including finding work and setting up the kids for school, etc. I just told the kids she was sick and needed to sleep, which wasn't entirely false. It was super emotionally taxing, but I would do it again in a heartbeat because it worked and she's been clean for 2 years. When my wife let it slip around her mom that she was having a lot of lesbian urges, her mom just waved it off and said, "Been there. Done that. Didn't like it." Not my mom, thank God, but an old girlfriend's. Her grandma got her mom drunk at the age of 15 and had a guest stranger have sex with her. Not quite wild. More dark, really. I just learned that I was likely conceived on Easter, when my mom wore a crotchless lace Onishi and teased my dad all night, and then I was born 9 months later. At least there's some passion there. I was conceived during a hurricane because no TV. Back in the 90s I flew to Canada and spent the weekend with a guy I'd been talking to in a chat room. Back in the 90s I was in a very famous tea. I grew weed legally. When I did it, my straight-laced father went on a long speech about growing techniques and tips. About 2/3 through he kinda stopped and stared at me and my brother and adds the addendum. "So I've heard." Through it all my mom was shooting daggers at him. I met my son's dad through a post he made on the casual encounters section of Craigslist. Our families think we met at a sports bar. I didn't get pregnant from a one-time thing or an NSA situation. We were together for 6 years. My mom used to date a drug lord in Birmingham, but was practically his crackery. Pedo. She had my brother. And to get away from it all, she joined the military. Dude ended up going to prison at the same time. And was stabbed to death just a few weeks in. My mother didn't tell us or my brother until he was around 35ish. Whoa. Thanks for the silver, kind stranger. My first one Thanksgiving, my grandmother confessed to the family that her father had run a speakeasy, and that she would tend bar mind the shop while he was out on liquor runs. I think she was pretty ashamed, but I think everyone found it pretty cool and didn't understand why she kept it a secret so long. My firstborn daughter I had at a very young age. I was 18. In grade 12. Skipping every single day. partying all the time and hanging out with a drug dealer at the time. That's her dad. He and I are not together. I moved on and got married and he is currently engaged, and he stopped dealing shortly after we found out I was pregnant. We co-parent really well actually. And he is now quite the stand-up father. All our daughter knows is that her mom and dad didn't love each other, so we separated. And now she's lucky to have 2 moms and 2 dads that love her very much. She's now 7. I'm wondering if it'll ever come out later about how her dad and I met. Edit, love all the positive feedback. And yes, we all co-parent really well. It took a little bit of time. But that's normal, I think, lol. We just want her to grow up knowing that even though we may not all live together, percent 100 of the time, that we all talk and communicate and love her the same. I was a drug dealer. Weed and pills. Worked 2 legit jobs along with the game just to afford my 1-bedroom apartment. The bigger crime is probably that 2 jobs is not enough to afford a single-bedroom apartment in some places. During Vietnam War era, my mom had a pretty serious boyfriend and he got drafted and she dumped him for my dad. Daughter of a mother with a wild secret. My dad was abusive. An extreme alcoholic and hit her regularly, so she kicked him in the balls so hard that he couldn't have kids after me. Obviously. He's dead now. Drunk driving. He took 4 people with him. My aunt got tipsy and told me everything. That my high school boyfriend and I had a son at 16 years old. We went through Catholic Family Services for an open adoption. We both get updates on how he is doing, even though we are not involved anymore. Also, my son is included in my will. Tell your other kids before you die. It's fairly easy for them to understand. I found out in my late teens I had half-sisters and it was hard to deal with. I can't imagine how much hate I'd feel for my dad if I found out in his will. I used to be an escort. If being an escort doesn't make me a member of the PTA, nothing will. Edit. Thank you so much for my first gold. How much of my teens I spent high. But now weed's socially acceptable in most cases. That's not even a thing. I'm disappointed. It's almost fun in a way to have something to shock your kids with. My own mom is really vanilla and is very old school. Bet she's probably hiding the fact she runs a local swingers club or something. Both my parents were very honest throughout most of my life, but over the summer when I was 17 my mom had mentioned that before I was born that my dad wanted to get an abortion. I had figured out on my own why my dad wanted an abortion was because we didn't make enough money to support another child. But my mother fought for me. So my dad ended up stopped drinking and smoking to be able to financially support me. Just found out last year that my mom got pregnant in college. The guy split as soon as he found out and she never saw him again. She decided to have the baby. Avoided going home when she was showing. And gave it up for adoption. My grandparents never knew. They died a few years ago, and I found out due to an ancestry.com DNA test. My half-brother contacted me and we pieced it together. She was relieved that it all came out in the end. It had been weighing on her all these years. She's in her 70s. I'm 40 now. And my new half-brother is 52 or so. Needless to say, it was a huge surprise. I never in a million years would have guessed at that. Edit. Just to clear up any confusion. My mom had my brother in college. And had me in her 30s. Edit. Also. No. This isn't an advertisement. It really happened and I only mentioned the site because that's how he found me. Otherwise I don't think we'd have ever found out. My mom was relieved that it came out. But was too scared to have ever come out with it on her own. This will get buried in this story is from my dad. When I was 19 and visiting home from college, my dad and I stayed up getting piss drunk. When I told him about my love for psychedelics, he clapped and said, "I knew it. Full stop." I asked why and he stated that, "Your mom was the acid queen. And we learned she was pregnant with you when she was 4 months in. We were tripping for your first couple of months." When I graduated college, My mom casually dropped the fact that she, a tiny little Asian woman, used to deal large quantities of marijuana when she was in high school, and once had to skip a basketball game because she accidentally took a duffel bag full of weed to school instead of her gym bag. It is our current situation, but we are swingers. Username checks out. I guess that I was a stripper for a while and worked at a bank the same time. Don't think I would share that. But if I heard them talk down about strippers, I'd probably educate them on what it's really like. I did what I had to do to put food on the table and give them a good life. My immediate family knows. Except my stepdad. And my children's dad knows. We sometimes talk about it but not really. I guess that I was a stripper for a while and worked at a bank the same time. Don't think I would share that. Yeah. It's probably not a good idea to tell your kids you worked in a bank. Bankers are shady AF. I don't want my kids to know anything about how I was raised. I really don't. Like, I can't watch anything family themed without crying. Most no kid movies leave me with a lump in my throat so big I could choke on it. And as they get older, it's harder to turn my face far enough for them not to see and twice as hard to not cry. My ceiling is their floor and I really just don't want them to have to handle grown-up problems until they are grown-ups. My wild secret is that's why we go for walks as a family rather than the movies. The movies are somewhere my husband takes them for special one-on-one time, so it's still a special thing that they get to do. But I won't make them sit through their mom having a F-king breakdown over some Ohana means family and family means nobody gets left behind line. My mom was a crazy native child that started smoking at 10. Smoke or choke as my grandma put it. Sold single cigarettes in elementary school. Once burned down a patch of forest because she was playing with fire with her friends. Smoked her brother's weed and drank with her dad. And ran away from home at 19. Now she scolds me and my sis for swearing in front of her IA. Edit. Okay, wow, I was not expecting this to get as upvoted as it has been. These were just offhanded things I remembered off the top of my head. For those wondering, she did not grow up on the res but her family did. They moved away for work as far as I remember. She's chip away from NDO. Any mean comments about her can be directed elsewhere because I love my mom and my family to bits and we have all put in a lot of work to have the wonderful relationship that we do now. Is this one of those threads where OP is just trying to source wank material for his MILF kink? I'm married, but before I met my husband a lot of my relationships were with women. I would talk about, but I think they'd be grossed out about the thought of me having any life at all before they existed. I have also struggled with depression since I was a teenager. We have talked a little bit about why I take meds, but I don't think they understand how serious it is. Plus, marijuana has recently become legal in my state, so I am about to check that out. Mommy was a SLT in college. Most of my life before I met her father, I sold drugs to pay my way through college and almost married the dude I sold for. That's not even the worst thing. My friends and I used to break into buildings for fun when I was in high school. We never got caught. We also never stole anything. But it was still super dangerous and also just F-king creepy on our parts. I'm a dad, not a mom. But I know what my wife's answer would be. How much she likes anal. I was a sugar baby in college. Made a lot of money but blew it all on dumb stuff. Also, my best friend from college and my roommate had the same sugar daddy. My kids call her aunt. They love her and she loves to babysit. My roommate and I had a lot of sex with each other. It was enjoyable, but it was mostly due to our daddy. He obviously found it hot. I was also submissive to both of them. Mommy did some nasty things. I was talking with my mom about finding jobs and she told me all sorts of things she did for jobs, including working as a waitress at a strip club. Edit. Not going to lie. Mom's been deceased for 38 years. Drunk oldest brother told me last year that she was a prostitute for a short time in the late 1950s, We're an older family. Large family with intermittent dad. Doesn't really change anything because she was a good provider. But I'd rather not have known that I supported myself and my infant daughter by working in an adult novelty store. When I was a struggling teenage mom. Her father had taken off. I was trying to get through school. I did what I had to do. And that involved selling dildos and body whip. And not asking questions about the section that was corded off and curtained. That's called working a job. That's really nothing to be ashamed of. Oh buddy. I'm late to the party. But here goes. Started doing drugs at 14. Went from trying weed to snorting coke in about 6 months. My drug habit turned addiction gave me the opportunity to try almost every substance imaginable. Except meth. I love uppers. Meth would have killed me. While I was hooked on crack. I had sex for money and or drugs. I stole things constantly for fun and for necessity. I conned people into giving me valuable items money. Eventually, I quit crack and chilled out a bit. But I was still recklessly promiscuous and doing every non-crack drug I could get my hands on. This continued until I was 28. When I hit rock bottom. My lowest point was the culmination of 2 events which occurred within the same month. I got a DUI and I FK'd a horrible guy who, I found out afterwards, was HIV+. We hadn't used protection. There's a happy ending though. I got tested. I have HPV. But nothing worse. And I got clean. In July I'll celebrate 6 years sober with my husband and 2 daughters. Oh boy. My mom has a lot of shitty in her past. My mom has done a lot of drugs. Got a fake ID for a full-time job and booze. Beat up a lot of girls my tios cheated on in high school. Dropped out of high school. Got my grandpa arrested. And lived a shitty childhood in general. She told us everything she did to try and lead us through a better childhood. Bonus. On our way to a little league baseball game as a kid. We got cut off by some young woman and her boyfriend when we were leaving our shared driveway with them. My mom got out of the car and was chewing them when the girl for some reason shoved my mom. Mom tackled her and punched the shitty out of her. Dumb girl tried to grab a rock. And my mom pinned her arm down with her knee while smashing her face in. BF tried pulling my mom off and got an elbow. Then he just sat back scared. Interesting to see as a kid. Always knew that my mom's boyfriend gave her a parrot in college. I have scars on my wrists from a, thankfully, failed suicide attempt when my daughter was 4. She vaguely remembers me being in the hospital and thinks I was in a car accident. I never want to tell her the truth no matter how old she is. You should as she gets older because mental illness is often genetic and it may help her know that she can always turn to you knowing that you understand. I will be frank with her about my partying days. Past drug use and dead friends. My mental health struggles and self-harming. Dating women. My struggles with my faith. My flings and relationships. But I will not talk to her about her father almost pressuring me into getting an abortion. He is a wonderful father and I will leave that to him if he ever wants bring it up. The 2 of them have an incredibly precious relationship and I don't ever want to damage it. My mom doesn't like pot because it makes her paranoid. Speed makes her feel like she's having a heart attack. He makes everything ticklish. Cocaine makes her dizzy. Shrooms make her see her nightmares. And she barely escaped being murdered by a former best friend who was a dealer. He's currently serving 4 life sentences without parole in the South somewhere for murdering 3 of their friend group. He was a dealer in the supplies. A cartel of some kind. Ordered him to kill the ones that lost the product. My mom and dad and 2 other friends were originally going to pick that batch up. They would hit a beach in Florida. Pick it up. And drive it back to Texas, but something had come up and my mom and dad bailed. The other half of their friend group was murdered by their best friend because of a failed pickup. Can't remember how much they lost, but this was the late 70s and she said it was worth something like $2 million then. She was a character witness at the trial and the images still haunt her.